Meanwhile, Western media continues to accuse Russia of targeting civilian areas, but a leading human rights organization says Ukrainian forces are placing heavy military equipment in residential neighborhoods. It is urging Ukraine to either remove its forces from populated areas or evacuate civilians out of those areas.
If they don't do that, that is a violation of the laws of war, because what they are doing is they are putting civilians at risk. Because all that military equipment are legitimate targets.
But a Ukrainian top official says that the military doctrine approved by parliament allows for, quote, total defense, meaning that military forces have legal authority to secure residential buildings. Kyiv has accused Russia of attempting to destroy the Ukrainian nation, but Russia has adamantly denied such allegations, saying it is only trying to eliminate the Ukrainian military. Some Western media outlets have reported on the claims that Ukraine is putting its own people at risk. We heard from a U.S. veteran who nevertheless says that Western media is rife with propaganda about the Ukrainian conflict.
I think everything that I could possibly know about what's going on in Ukraine right now can only be understood to come through a filter of lies and propaganda from people who can't be trusted. Basically, Ukraine right now has the Western mainstream media propaganda machine totally behind it. Zelensky's a hero. They're making dolls of him. I mean, it's ridiculous. The memes almost write themselves from the propaganda, and it really is nonsense. You know, him playing up the militarism even of it is one of the most dangerous mythologies of militarism. I mean, it shows up looking tough in his green T-shirt and walk around a flak jacket and helmet, and it's reinforcing this false mythology that militarism, that killing to defend corrupt power can ever be righteous.
By dire German forecasts of the catastrophic effect.
Hello, it's Art International. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Including a decade-long recession.
Great, please stand by. We'll start in a couple of minutes.
Ensures
Okay.
desperate civilians in the southern Ukrainian city of Mariupol and helps evacuate.
Sir Adam, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Are you ready for the interview?
Ready when you are. So just one question. I mean, just a couple questions real quick. This is pre-tape, so if I stutter or something, you want me to just start over?
Yeah.
Okay.
So first question. It's not possible even for Western media now to ignore Kiev tactics to use their citizens as a shield. But is it several events when Ukrainian forces did it, or is it often practice?
I think everything that I could possibly know about what's going on in Ukraine right now can only be understood to come through a filter of lies and propaganda from people who can't be trusted. So it's really not appropriate to say what's going on there without just condemning the entire thing and doing what we can to de-escalate.
How do you think, why does Kiev do that, like shooting Ukraine citizens?
Wars bring out the worst in people. All war is criminal. And it puts people in desperate life and death situations. So I'm not surprised that once you have bought in to the big lie that killing for governments can ever be justified, of course you're going to resort to all sorts of horrific tactics when you can make something that is evil good through that propaganda.
And will Biden or European leaders condemn Kiev of committing crimes against humanity? How do you think?
You're asking, will they condemn them?
Yeah, will they? Is it possible?
If Joe Biden came out right now and said that what was going on with this human shield story in Kiev and Ukraine in general, and just outright condemned it, said this is absolute evil, there's no worse war crime, this has to stop, it would just be another bit of hypocrisy. The American government is just as much criminally warmongers as the Russian government or the Ukrainian government. All governments are fundamentally criminal. Everybody who engages in war, unless it's truly defensive, and there is some legitimacy to the original American ideal of militia-based defense, of something that's integrated with the citizenry that can only be used for defensive purposes. But all troops that serve in militaries for governments are essentially human shields for corrupt people in power who shouldn't be in power in the first place. They are human shields defending illegitimate power. So to hear one of them, when you ask that question, like, would this leader or that leader condemn it? Like, I don't really care. They're all evil. If they were to do that, pot calling the kettle black, to use the old cliche, it's just more hypocrisy, propaganda. And I appreciate that RT, Russia Today, is covering this, and I really appreciate that you sent me the story from the Washington Post that acknowledged Russia killing civilians in the Ukraine while the Ukrainians are doing the human shield, whatever. But I fundamentally don't believe most of what I'm seeing in the mainstream media about this. But if what you're doing is the Russian media outlet is saying, we're evil, but they're slightly more evil. Honestly, I just don't want to have anything to do with either side of this. Just say, you're all really disappointing. This is terrible, and it all needs to stop, and people need to wake up and get over this whole idea that killing for politicians can ever be righteous.
And so, but here is still all eyes on topics like Russia killed civilians, despite Russia's declaration that Kiev shells Donbas cities and something like that. Why doesn't the West pay attention to this?
I think the West is paying attention. At least to the extent that the American government is using its propaganda machine to shift the blame away from Fauci and the COVID boondoggle and the COVID relief, greatest fraud in American history, the greatest ripoff, and what it's done for Americans' health. They would be so pissed off. Everybody in the West would be revolting right now over how poorly COVID has been handled. I shouldn't say handled, even used as an excuse to make the rich richer at the expense of everybody else. So they're looking to distract people with the new shiny thing. And it's, oh, look at Ukraine. And so the West is paying attention, but it's paying attention to this, mythologized propaganda version of events. And you see it like all over, you want to say Western social media. I don't know what you qualify as the West versus not the West. But you see people with masks, even with the blue and yellow for Ukraine, with all sorts of blue and yellow on their profile pictures, because it's being used to justify more militarism. It's being used to justify more military spending, more military intervention. The American government is always looking for an opportunity to deploy its military. Now, with what's going on in Ukraine, with Russia, and what's actually about to happen with the, I think it's Friday the 31st, coming up in just 2 days, Putin has said that he's going to stop accepting any currency but the ruble for Russian oil. And that's really smart. I think what he's doing is more trying to crash the dollar. And I'm not endorsing Putin's actions. I'm just saying one of the obvious things that the Western media is trying to get me to believe that I can't is that Putin is dumb. Putin may be evil, strong man, he might be compensating for something, but he's not stupid. And he's playing a bigger game here. And I think what we're about to see is a little bit closer to his end game, because it might be that what he's about to do is crash the dollar. But if that doesn't happen, of course, the U.S. military, the U.S. government is always going to look for an opportunity to escalate and intervene.
And what does such attitude towards its own citizens say about the government?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand you. The accent's really intense, but try one more time, please.
Okay. What does such attitude, like using civilians as a shield, say about the government?
It's no surprise that the government of Ukraine, given its obvious public history, is capable of incredible evil. Biolabs, laundering money with the Bidens, the oil and gas scams, the oligarchy, all of that, but it's just a smaller scale of what's happening in Russia and all the bigger evil governments around the world. So, yeah, I mean, confirmed they're capable of evil. Yes, you put them in a desperate situation, you give them, basically Ukraine right now has the Western mainstream media propaganda machine totally behind it. Zelensky's a hero. They're making dolls of him. I mean, it's ridiculous. The memes almost write themselves from the propaganda, and it really is nonsense. Him playing up the militarism even of it is one of the most dangerous mythologies of militarism. I mean, it shows up looking tough in his green T-shirt and walk around a flak jacket and helmet, and it's reinforcing this false mythology that militarism, that killing to defend corrupt power can ever be righteous.
Thank you, Sir Adam, for the interview.
All right, you're very welcome. If that's it, I look forward to seeing how you put that together on the air.
Yeah, it will be tomorrow since 4 a.m. in Moscow time.
Well, I did say Wednesday like today, but it should be fine.
We'll send you a link.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, I really hope you can air all of that. You think you can include the stuff that's critical of the Russian government in there too?
Okay, I'll say it to broadcast journalist. Sorry.
I mean, I'm really curious, dude. I want to know what's going on right now because, I used to work for Russia Today. I mean, you know this, and now, I mean, Russia's with everything that's going on. If there's anything I can do to be a bridge for peace, I would love to be able to get this message out to a broader audience. But I don't know what are you doing with RT right now? I mean, are you using me as a U.S. military veteran to condemn the Ukrainian government? Because I really hope you don't twist my words. And take that out of context and just have the parts of me condemning the Ukrainian government, because that would really be unfair.
Okay, I'll convey these words to our editor-in-chief.
All right, well, I appreciate that.
Okay,
Thanks for the
Have a good
opportunity.
day.